can't beat him to this game. He's a pre-second, so I don't know who do to no small, but it's normal. Yes, the pre-second. He's grateful. Dr. Adipa Adipo is my guest in studio. Doc, thank you very much indeed for coming to the studio. We're grateful. Good to see you.
Johnny, thanks for having me.
And congratulations to you and your alma mater for Science and Maths quiz.
Yeah.
Don't worry. It's okay. It's okay.
It's pre-second the rest, you know.
We are not angry. It's okay. Feel free. Enjoy. Enjoy it while it lasts.
We have the bragging rights for another year.
Doc, what is diabetes?
Yeah, diabetes is it's a metabolic disorder. So a lot of people mistake diabetes to be just the increase of sugar or glucose in the blood. It is not. People may have sugar or glucose increasing in the blood transiently after you have eaten. And that is supposed to happen because once you have eaten food, the body is supposed to digest, especially the carbohydrates,
Right.
and break it down into the simple sugar we call glucose, which is the end product.
Right.
Now, that glucose has to be divided depending on the amount you have eaten,
Okay.
and it will be stored, part will be stored in the liver to be used later. And the rest has to be pushed into the cells to be burnt for your energy use.
3FM.
So
92.6.
once you have eaten, that transient rise of glucose in the blood is not diabetes.
Okay.
However, diabetes happens to be the result of the inability of the body to push the glucose into the cells,
Right.
thereby making the glucose perpetually increased in the blood. That causes a lot of damage to the tissues of the body. And that leads to certain complications like blindness, sexual dysfunction. It can even cause kidney failure.
Wow.
In fact, diabetes is the number one cause of non-traumatic amputations,
Which is
which is meaning that, you know, some amputations happen because the person has been involved in an accident.
right.
And the bone is broken, the tissues are damaged beyond repair, so we have to amputate for the person to live.
Right.
Diabetes happens to be or to lead to that form of amputation without trauma,
I see.
meaning that when the glucose remains in the blood for a very long time, it gets itself attached to the nerve endings of the body.
Okay.
And then, for instance, the nerves that supply the legs or the limbs, the hands, the feet, and all that, when the glucose perpetually gets attached to those nerves, it damages them. And therefore, you lose the sensation. So you realize that a diabetic may have a sore, but because he doesn't feel the pain,
Right.
they don't even take care of it. They may put their legs in fire and they don't feel the pain. So
Right.
they don't dress
Right.
it. And because the feet are close to the ground, they get infected. And therefore, you realize that that portion of the feet, which has been denervated by the glucose, will keep the wound will keep spreading
3FM.
because that
92.
part of the flesh is invariably dead. And therefore, for the person to live, he must be amputated.
Who is at risk? Who is susceptible? They say, oh, this one is for rich people.
No.
It's rich people's illness. Is it true?
Everybody is at risk, especially, you know, there is a growing trend of people using bleaching creams these days, men, women alike, the
correct.
youth.
That's correct.
Now, corticosteroids are one of the leading causes of insulin resistance. So the use and abuse of corticosteroids can cause the insulin to become inactive.
Okay.
And insulin is the hormone that helps the body to push the excess glucose into the cells. You remember I say diabetes is not the transient rise of glucose in the blood.
Right.
Now, when your insulin is working, it is a hormone produced by the pancreas. When it is working, no matter the amount of glucose you have eaten or no matter the amount of table sugar you have eaten, it can be pushed into the cell,
Right.
and the rest stored in the liver as
Because it's
glycogen.
optimal function.
Yes, that's its optimal function. But if the insulin is countered by another hormone, like a corticosteroid, then it becomes, the glucose resists the insulin.
This corticosteroids is found in what? The creams that
Inside,
they use?
yes. Most bleaching creams contain corticosteroids.
Wow.
And some sexual enhancement medications also contain corticosteroids. So the abuse, if it's a doctor who prescribes that medication for you,
Right.
is for a transient period, and you don't stop the use of the corticosteroid immediately, that can also result in different complications that are for a different day.
I see.
But that corticosteroid counters, its effect counters the insulin. So that is why a doctor must monitor you
Okay.
and taper the corticosteroid towards the end of its use. Gradually.
So
withdraw.
that it's withdrawn from you.
Exactly.
You mentioned the youth particularly. Are they the only ones susceptible? You said everybody else?
Oh
But-
no. So the older you are, the more susceptible you are. Now, I'll say that diabetes has two main types.
Okay.
The type 1 and the type 2.
Okay.
Type 1 happens to be among children and young adults.
Children.
Yes, children. We have discovered diabetes in children as young as 10.
Wow.
Yes.
And what is their crime?
Their crime happens to be that either the pancreas got destroyed early in life. Either it may be through an infection or an autoimmune disease that they may have had.
Okay.
So when that autoimmune disease, auto destruction of the islets of
That's the body
Langerhans,
fighting itself.
the body fights itself. Some, infections may cause the body to go into overdrive, and the antibodies produced by the body, which is supposed to counter the infection, begin to fight themselves, and that leads to a certain type of complication. That happened in COVID, for instance. That
You spoke about it.
Yes.
Comorbidities
Exactly.
and all of us.
Exactly. So when that happens, type 1 incomplete production, or complete lack of production of the insulin leads to the type 1 diabetes. And those people have to be on insulin therapy to maintain their, glucose or their, glycemic levels. Now, the type 2 happens to be mostly acquired. I will say acquired, but there are some genetic effects to it.
Okay.
So if you are an obese person, you are someone who is sedentary, you lack activity, so exercise and all that. It may so happen that as you grow, you have stored a lot of fat. You like a lot of fatty food and all that. You have built a lot of cholesterol over the years. That may lead to an inaction of the insulin, because you are putting a high demand on the insulin at all times to be produced and to push
I see.
the sugar into the
Let's talk about
cells.
gender, men or women. Who stands at the greater risk?
Both alike, men and women alike, have an equal. But I'll say that men slightly 45-55% towards the men.
What warning signs should we be looking out for?
Now, for everybody who sees that you are urinating too quickly, many times a day, you are drinking a lot of water, quick, you get thirsty very quickly, you urinate very quickly, you are eating adequately, but you are losing weight. All right? So, and maybe
So say that again, please.
polyuria, meaning that your urine is way out of league.
Okay.
Then you are drinking a lot of water. You feel thirsty almost all the time. Less than 30 minutes, you are thirsty again.
Okay.
You should come to the hospital and get tested. If you are losing weight, even though you eat adequately, you realize that you are eating all right, but you're not gaining weight, or you are losing the weight you already have. Unexplainably, you should come to the hospital.
All right.
And the third thing is you get hungry very quickly. Because diabetes actually is hunger in the midst of plenty. You have the glucose all right, which should adequately be used by the tissues of your body to generate the energy you need, but you're still hungry because the glucose is not being pushed into the cells.
So, but there are people who like to drink water naturally. I mean, because you doctors tell us to drink 8 glasses of water a day, keeps the doctor away, blah, 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 eat fruits and all that. Then
Exactly.
they drink the water and they start peeing. Should they be scared?
Yes and no. Now, the amount of water you drink should commensurate the amount of urine you produce at the end of the day. If you see that is not happening, or that is way beyond what your demand and supply is,
Right.
you should be worried.
If I pee and it foams or it doesn't foam, what does it mean? Does it mean I have diabetes? I don't?
No, foaming of the urine doesn't necessarily mean that you have diabetes.
Okay.
But gone were the days when we used when there were no proper sanitary places to urinate.
Right.
You will realize that people who pee, ants will gather around the place. In fact, if you are urinating at the same spot, it foams.
Okay.
But a viscous urine will tend to foam because the glucose has caused the
This is the thick urine.
Yes, the thick urine. The amount of glucose in the urine has caused it to be its specific gravity to be higher. So it also begins to foam.
Right.
And the foam of a diabetic person's urine does not, the ladder does not go off very quickly.
Okay.
Urine that is of normal consistency and viscosity, appearance, and all that. Even though it foams, no sooner had it foamed than the foam will disappear.
What can I eat to prevent diabetes?
That is one thing that people say, assuming that it is your eating of food
Right.
that causes the diabetes. I've already established the fact that diabetes is not related to the food you have eaten if your insulin is working.
Right.
So our Ghanaian dishes are good, good to be eaten at all occasions. However, if you have been diagnosed as someone who has diabetes, then the dietitian comes in to regulate your diet for you. So your diet should still contain all the foods in the right amount, but it should be regulated and eaten at certain times so that the medication you are on will help to regulate the sugar for you.
I just got a message. Somebody is asking me the relationship between your kidney, your liver, and the pancreas and all of that, and whether one could trigger the others or, vice versa. What do you say?
It's a very good question. The diabetes, once you have diabetes, you are at risk of all these organs dysfunction if you do not treat it. Like I said, the kidney may fail. We call it, it's a complication, a long-term complication of diabetes called diabetic nephropathy.
Okay.
The nephrons or the working units of the kidney may get destroyed because glucose is constantly going through the kidney to be filtered out.
Okay.
And the nerves that also innervate the kidneys may also get destroyed. And therefore, in the end, you may have a kidney failure due to a complication of diabetes. The liver is the one that stores glucose in the form of glycogen and releases it later. So you realize that when you are fasting, at a point, you begin to feel hungry in the morning. But after some time, you don't feel hungry anymore.
Right.
You know why?
No.
The glycogen that has been stored by the liver gets released into the blood as glucose.
Oh, okay. Your backup.
Your backup system. Now, when that is happening and you have diabetes, you may have some gastroenterology problems, meaning that your liver may also begin to fail as a result of the insulin, because the glycogen you have is already stored.
Okay.
Now, there is no negative feedback from the body that the glycogen should be released into the blood, because already the glucose is very high
Right.
in the blood, and therefore there's no time of, even though you are feeling hungry, because the tissues are deprived, there is no trigger for the liver to release the glucose into the blood, and therefore with time, that function of communication is lost, and then the liver also begins to have a problem. Heart disease is one thing. So
people with blood pressure.
Yes, people with diabetes,
okay.
you are likely to find them also hypertensive as a result of a long-term complication of the diabetes. So that is why these two became the underlying conditions that could tip COVID patients into severity, and they were the ones who we lost mostly during the time. And this is why the campaign is on, that everybody should check their numbers so that we are able to manage them.
What numbers are we talking about?
Well, glucose, the normal level should be at least 3.3 to 5.5 millimole per liter.
Okay.
There's a tight leash. The range is not very much.
Okay.
And therefore, that short window or that small reference range must be maintained, so that, because if you are fasting and your glucose is up to 6, you are likely diabetic.
It should not happen.
It should not happen.
It should not be around that.
3.3 or 3.5 to 5.5 millimole per liter should be your glucose when you are fasting.
Okay.
And that is why we usually depend on the fasting blood glucose to determine. But if it is 6, likely you are diabetic. Now, if you are not fasting, which we call the random blood glucose, when you are tested at a non-fasting state, the maximum level or the maximum number you should have is 10. If it exceeds, if it's up to 11, you are likely diabetic. And there are other tests that we do to determine whether or not you are diabetic.
Which
and then
other
we can
numbers are we looking at? So we've looked at glucose. What else should we be looking for?
We should also check for the hypertension, or check your hypertension status, your blood pressure all the time, because one may lead to the other.
Okay.
And vice versa.
Can your father or your mother dash you diabetes?
The risk factors,
hereditary.
Yes, there is a genetic component to diabetes. So we say if you have a family history of diabetes, there is the likelihood that you may also be diabetic, especially the type 2 diabetes. It has a genetic component to it. But genetics loads the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. So, like I said, if you are genetically predisposed to diabetes mellitus, there are things you should do that should keep you genetically predisposed but not actually having it.
Okay, so your lifestyle, exercise, drink a lot of water,
taking a lot of water,
get a lot of
avoiding
rest,
smoking as much as possible.
Okay,
because nicotine is one thing that can lead to getting diabetes mellitus, apart from the use of the corticosteroid. So smokers have a much more predisposition to getting diabetes
mellitus.
Don't
bleach as well.
Don't bleach. And do not, apart from the bleaching, do not abuse the corticosteroids. In any medication that you find corticosteroids, you should seek advice, aphrodisiacs and all that. Alcoholic beverages. You should seek your doctor's consent before using them.
Doc, now I've heard you. I've listened to wisdom. Where do I go for help?
Come to the hospital. Every primary healthcare facility has the ability to check glucose. The glucometer is not expensive,
right?
So it's at every primary healthcare center. So once you go there, you want to check your glucose level. It is checked, and you know your numbers. If you must fast before you do it, you must eat at least 10 to 12 hours apart.
Okay.
So for instance, if you have to go tomorrow, which is the World Diabetes Day, for instance, that is being launched, you can eat by 6 p.m. tonight.
Okay.
I mean today.
Okay.
By 6 p.m. you should have your supper, so that by 8 a.m. or by 6 a.m. you should have fasted for 12 hours.
And then you're
fasting.
good to go.
You're good to go. And then once the glucose is checked, you know your numbers. If you fall between the 3.5 to 5.5,
hallelujah.
That is hallelujah for you. And then you can from there know how to do the other 2Ds. For instance, I say that the management of diabetes depends on 3 things.
Tell me.
the 3 Ds that I call it: your diet, your discipline, and your drugs.
Diet, discipline, drugs.
Yes.
Diet, discipline, drugs.
Yes. And I say that for your diet, if your diet at the end of the day is not as colorful as the Ghana flag, you have not had a balanced diet.
That's striking. So
Yes.
carrots kakra,
Carrots kakra,
tomatoes kakra, genie kakra, green pepper kakra,
you
beans
know,
kakra, wheat
exactly,
kakra.
exactly. So at the end of the day,
best kind of
exactly,
breakfast. Yeah.
you should
For
you
the
should have-
rich.
Yeah, no, it's for everybody.
These
I don't
days,
see.
the vegetables,
I don't
when
see
you go and
why-
buy them, they'll choke you.
I don't see why we are no longer eating kontomire. You know, the way we used to
Yes.
grind it in the ayuwa
yes.
in the morning and eat cassava. You know, boiled cassava. I don't
fiber
know
and
why-
everything.
Exactly. We are losing that. We are losing all the water soluble vitamins that we have to processed food. And we think that is for the rich. It is not.
Okay.
It is for everybody.
Doc, we have to pack it here. Because, we got carried away. But where's the launch happening for the World Diabetes Day?
Well, the Greater Accra Regional Hospital is having one. It's happening all over across the country, and where everywhere that is close to you, just go there and have your numbers checked.
Right.
We will be available at the Greater Accra Regional Hospital to make sure that everybody is checked.
Dr. Emmanuel Adipa Adipo is with the Accra Regional Hospital. Thank you so much indeed for joining us in studio. And as always, we've drunk deep into your well of wisdom. And we'll have you again in good time.
Thank
on
you for
another
having me.
subject. Just throw the subject at him, he will deliver for you. I went to Presec, that's why that's 2-0. Yeah, but it's okay. Have a good morning. We'll see you tomorrow.
No more diabetes.